Hello, and welcome to the Movie Universe. I'm your host, Movie Fan. Today, I will be talking about the legendary film, The Phantom of the Opera. And no, it will not be about the Andrew Lloyd Webber version. Instead, I will be talking about the 1925 version. That's right, folks, the first Phantom of the Opera ever made. This is really special because this year is the 100th anniversary of this legendary film. Now, I'm pretty sure just about everybody is familiar with the story because even now, the book is legendary. And of course, there's so many movies out there. And essentially, it's the same story. They just always change up a few small details. But it all follows one simple plot line. The Phantom is a genius who, well, he lives in the opera house. He has a grotesque face, hence the mask, and he fell in love with a opera singer named Christine. But of course, when she favors Raoul over him, he starts to get more diabolic, and he goes at just about any length to have her, even to the point of committing several murders and bringing down the chandelier. Of course, that depends which version you watch. And that's the basic story that we're all familiar with, and essentially, that's what this movie is. However, what happened behind the scenes and in the making of this is even more groundbreaking than anyone could possibly imagine. This was the first time that Hollywood ever went all in to try to create a huge set. And I'm not kidding, they really did. This was a steel structure set that was designed to look exactly like the Opera House in Paris. And it was so well made that it was used for decades. It's no lie. They used it for so many scenes in movies. It was even used for the legendary 1946 remake starring Claude Rains. And believe it or not, that famous soundstage actually survived for 90 years. It became the oldest stage set in existence. And unfortunately, in 2014, they tore it down to make room for a Harry Potter. I hated Harry Potter to begin with, and this gives me another reason to hate it. And no, I'm not lying. But of course, the production is only as good as its cast and crew. And of course, this had probably one of the greatest actors of the silent movie era. That would be Lon Chaney. He, of course, plays the Phantom, and he is known as the man of 1,000 faces because he was truly the master of the silent movie. Lon Chaney actually did all of his own makeup, hence the title, The Man of 1,000 Faces. And believe it or not, this movie was actually a follow up for him because just shortly before, he had finished doing The Hunchback of Notre Dame, which, again, he did all the makeup himself, but this one proved to be a challenge even for him, especially when we get to the legendary Unmasking. He actually read the book to try to get some inspiration, and he really did try to follow it closely because in the book, it is described as the Phantom's face looking something like a decaying corpse, or a skull if you prefer. And he tried to emulate that by putting putty on his cheeks, and he put some cotton wadding in his mouth to extend it out a little more. He had some special teeth put in so he could have that, that decayed skull teeth look. He had a fish skin put on his nose to give it a odd look. But furthermore, he also had a skull cap put on that would elongate his forehead somewhat, and he even put wire up his nose to give it that upturned look. I've heard it told that it was either hooks or fish hooks or wire that was attached to a string that was hidden by putty, and it was just pulled back. And it's been said that his nose bled quite a bit because of that. And furthermore, he also put egg whites in his eyes to give him that cloudy look that you're looking at right now. I told my friends Bonnie and Joshua about this before, and they were shocked, rightfully so, because anyone who would go that far. And he did. He really did. He went so far to put egg whites in his eyes. And can you imagine how much that really hurt? But yeah, he did it. And the results, I think, speak for themselves because He is grotesque, and it's very memorable. This scene was so scary for our leading lady, Christine, who is played by actress Mary Philbin. She was so shocked that I'm sure she had to take a minute after the scene was done because she was not allowed to see what the Phantom looked like until that moment because Cheney wanted her reaction to be real. And when you see her take off that mask and see him, it's real. It's not an act. It is real. And that just makes the scene even better. But as great as the production was, it also had some problems. In fact, this movie had gone through 3 different directors. Because the first director, Rupert Julian, he alienated the cast and the crew so much that finally the producers just had enough of him and fired him. I'm not kidding. This guy drove everybody up the wall. In fact, Lon Chaney had a few choice words to say to him. They hated each other's guts. In fact, it got so bad that the cameraman had to act as a go-between. When that happens, you got a real problem. And obviously, the producers, they wanted Lon Chaney. And if he ended up walking, so they threw him out and went for another director who unfortunately tried to turn it into a comedy. But of course, you'll never see that because the producers watched the footage. They were not happy with it. And so they fired him too. And they went for a few other directors until finally they got what they wanted. And the results was incredible. And believe it or not, this film actually features an early form of Technicolor, a 2D type Technicolor, which was still kind of in the experimental stage at the time. This wasn't the first one to do it, but it was certainly one of the earliest. However, they would only use it for certain scenes, most notably the masquerade. And when the movie finally came out in 1925, it was a huge success. In fact, it's been regarded as the last hurrah for the silent films, because in 1927 came the first talkie, The Jazz Singer. And with sound actually coming into movie productions, well, they decided to get in on the bandwagon and try to, well, basically re-air the Phantom of the Opera, but with sound. Now, they did manage to get the entire cast members back, except for one person, and that would be Lon Chaney himself. He turned it down. The reasons why, I don't think he ever did say. My friend Bonnie had a theory that maybe he turned it down because, well, for him, silent movies was an art form. And that might be the real reason. And either way, I still got to give Universal credit for at least trying to get him back. They still kept Chaney's name on it because, well, they had to. He was the star that made this movie happen. It was released in 1930, and just like in 1925, it was a great success. However, in recent years, it has pretty much been forgotten because the 1925 film still grips you in the biggest way. And it's easy to see why the 1925 film is so legendary because Lon Chaney's performance more than makes up for the fact that there's no sound. Just watching him, the way he moves, the way he acts, he really plays that character. He brings it to life. For Mary Philbin, she does do a great job playing Christine. Because, well, for starters, she is very beautiful. Even for that time, she's actually very beautiful. And, of course, her reaction to the Phantom, even though that was not an act, it's still great. But it's really Lon Chaney that makes the show what it is. And I highly recommend that you guys look this up because it is phenomenal. Before I go, I want to say happy 100th anniversary to this legendary film, and I certainly hope everybody takes the time to look it up. I'm sure you're going to love it. This is Movie Fan, signing off.